In this video, I'm going to take a look at Battlefield 5 and go over all the issues I believe the game has and bring you a short history of what we've seen so far in terms of patches and updates. I've also got a selection of clips in the background that explain my issues with the game with personal experiences. This video by no means condemns Battlefield 5 to be a bad game. I do believe there is still a lot of potential there, and with the consistent updates DICE want to bring to the game, I reckon we will have a decent product within 6 months. However, this is all a prediction. What this review looks at is what we actually have right now and what we've seen in the past, which certainly isn't an unplayable game, but definitely isn't a perfect one. From the very beginning, Battlefield 5 has been a bit of a rollercoaster. BF5 went through a crazy marketing campaign that in my opinion was the worst I've ever seen, not only in the franchise so far, but with AAA games in general. We then saw a game on release that didn't include everything that DICE said it would, with many features being held back from launch. Following that, we saw the start of a live service, with small updates appearing, bringing us new maps and tweaks to the game. This was also really underwhelming in my opinion, with several disappointing updates. The first update that really annoyed me was the initial airdrop. For those people that ordered the Ultimate Edition, you were supposed to gain an airdrop each week for 20 weeks, with access to special cosmetics that would make you stand out on the battlefield. During week 1, we got access to a badge, completely pointless and not worth a penny. We then got access to one part of a weapon skin, again not worth any of the £20 we had to pay in order to gain access to the Ultimate Edition. This was pretty pathetic, and in my opinion you should start as you mean to go on. The first couple of airdrops should have been awesome cosmetics, really nice outfits for soldiers, maybe a really awesome hat, something that would make me think, yes, that was worth paying for, and other people playing on Battlefield would see my cool hat and go, where do you get that from? Let me see how I can unlock it, and cause some sort of a snowball effect with the cosmetics. This would then play dividends in the future, as DICE probably charge for company coins and get people to buy things that way. I think it was a really good idea to start strong with this, however they didn't, and it just smacked of disappointment. We then had a few other updates, such as the introduction of Panzerstorm and the practice range. Again, not ideal updates, but pretty nice additions. The update that really disappointed me though was the TTK change. This was reverted after a week, but the issue went far deeper than just the fact DICE decided to change the time to kill overnight. If people think back, DICE actually released a statement saying they wouldn't change the TTK, and everyone in the community was pretty happy with that. They then did change the TTK after pretty much every section of the core community imploring them not to do so. As I alluded to in the previous video, I reckon the TTK change was not supported by most of the devs, and in fact was pushed through by someone with more power than that, but this stuff is of course behind closed doors and no one will ever know the real reason for it. Hopefully we don't see another knee-jerk reaction like TTK 0.5 again in Battlefield 5, because it had a really negative effect on the game. With BF5, we were promised a game that would go back to the roots of the franchise, with team play at the core of everything we experienced. Changes to reviving, the addition of Attrition, and the removal of spotting were just a few of the changes that would bring a really refreshing Battlefield experience, and maybe not everyone would enjoy it, but at least it would be something individual, and DICE would be trying something new. This, however, was just not the case. Attrition was chopped and changed so much that it doesn't actually have much bearing on the game at this point, and in fact just forces you to camp more with the changes to the healing system. Changes to reviving is okay, but DICE promised being able to drag friendlies behind cover, which still hasn't actually reached the game, and in my opinion, linked into Attrition and the fact that you could revive with all classes, it was all part of a big package that DICE wanted to bring to the game. With the spotting, well, with Battlefield 5 the visibility is clearly a major issue, and with 3D spotting gone, this issue becomes even more apparent. Now don't think for 1 minute that I think 3D spotting should definitely return, but at the same time, if you can't see enemies, it makes the entire experience really frustrating. DICE need to sort this issue out and make enemies stand out more. Now on to some more issues with the game that I hope DICE address with the upcoming updates. Starting out with teammates. In a game that relies on team play, Battlefield 5 really doesn't do a good job of explaining the entire process of being a good teammate to new players. First off, let's look at ammo. If I run out of ammo in Battlefield 5, I have 3 choices. Redeploy, not something you should really do to gain ammo in Battlefield, but it is a choice. Number 2, run around trying to pick up the tiny ammo bags that fallen enemies have dropped. A pretty decent alternative, but not always possible. Number 3, lo and behold, you have to ask a teammate to drop ammo. Now this is something that has plagued Battlefield for the longest time. Not all players will drop ammo, or even realise that as a support player it is their job to do so. They even get loads of points for doing it, as if that isn't already enough of an incentive. With the removal of kit switching, I can no longer pick up a support weapon and quickly throw some ammo bags to teammates, so this really does place pressure on the support players in your team. In order to fix this, I reckon DICE should include some beginner tips and tricks videos that play in the loading screens of games. They don't need to have audio, maybe just a picture with some guides or something that could enable these new players to understand what they have to do. Just 10 seconds that point these new players in the right direction. The fact level 1 players can still take tanks and planes without having to complete a training mission is also something that baffles me to this day, but hey, I guess we all have to start somewhere, even if it means wasting a precious vehicle for your team.
We have lost objective George, soldiers.
Moving on, we have one of the biggest things I dislike in Battlefield 5, the animations. I hate animations, and I've made this clear in previous videos. I want to be in control of my soldier the entire time, not be subject to animations that cannot be instantly cancelled or prevented. Animations whilst arming objectives are fine, these are essential for game balance purposes so I can deal with them, but the animations that reduce the fun I'm having in game for no meaningful gain at all should not be a thing. Vaulting out of a window is pretty awesome, but then landing on the floor and doing a 2-second animation of standing back up, well, that kinda sucks. Picking up the bomb on airborne as you run over it also is not very smart. What if I don't want the bomb? Surely clicking a button to instantly pick it up would make more sense instead of the animation of throwing it over your shoulder. Check out this clip of me being punished because the soldier in front of me gets taken out, he drops the bomb and then my soldier automatically picks it up. I can't really work out what I did, maybe I ran in the wrong place or clicked the wrong button, but essentially it put me in a position where I couldn't do anything about it. This is kind of annoying, and is something that should never even be considered entering a Battlefield game. You also have the animation caused from a friendly V1 or JB2 rocket landing near you, as it will knock you over, even if it's the friendly explosion. What sort of silly idea was that? I get if it's an enemy V1 rocket and it hits the ground and blasts you back, that's fine, but a friendly explosion? Imagine if you start getting knocked around by friendly grenades or friendly dynamite. It's almost like you're playing an ultra-hardcore version of Battlefield, which makes no sense. If they wanted to do that, make a separate mode called Hardcore Mode, like we've had in pretty much every Battlefield previously, with this sort of stuff included. Moving on, we have the time to die bug. Dying in one frame is still a thing in Battlefield 5. It was a thing when the game first came out, it was a thing when DICE changed to TTK 0.5, and it was a thing when they changed the TTK back. I do not see how they can sort this issue out, as it smells of a network bug to me. Footsteps. These do not exist in BF5, and for a AAA FPS game, I find that fairly embarrassing. I understand that Frostbite must be a really tricky engine to work in, and I certainly have no idea how to code a video game, but even so, footstep audio is a cornerstone to any decent FPS experience. Not having that audio on release, and then not immediately fixing it, tells me that DICE might not actually be able to do anything at all about it, which is a massive shame. Getting knifed in the back from someone who is essentially silent really does suck the fun out of my gaming experience. We all remember the terrible spawns in BF5. Although some of the really big ones have been fixed, such as bombing an enemy team whilst they're in their spawn with a Ju-88 bomber, can't believe that one got into the game. But there are a few more, and this will be ongoing for DICE to fix, as it's been in previous Battlefield games as well. I'm talking about little spawn problems, so you'll be shooting an enemy, you'll kill him, and then an enemy will spawn in his position, or maybe you'll spawn on a flag, and it will be right between two enemy players and you'll die, or you'll want to spawn on a flag and the game will put you in the middle of a field miles away from the objective in question. These things need to be looked at. As always in Battlefield, it's very difficult to test them before the game actually comes out, so hopefully DICE are on the case. I've touched on this in previous games, but the UI in Battlefield 5 is not to my taste at all. Starting with what you have on screen, I feel as if we've taken some pretty large steps back from the UI that we had in BF4. The minimalist white text with a light shadow behind it looks pretty basic and boring, but not only that, it is incredibly difficult to see behind a white background. I know the devs have argued that you can change some settings to make the white text pop out more, but it still doesn't fix the issue entirely. I guess we won't see this fixed in BF5, but my point is that if the next game could go back to something more similar to Battlefield 4 with the UI, that would be more to my taste and pretty good overall. As for what we have to put up with the in-game menus, I'm really not sure what to say. Having to switch between Axis and allied soldiers in order to change weapons for each class is silly, logging out of a game in order to change assignments is silly, the skill tree system is far too simple and fairly boring, the fact you can't change an entire weapon to one skin and have to alter each part of the gun is laborious, and the entire customization process is pretty poor when compared to other titles such as Battlefield 4. I mean, even World War III managed to produce a really extensive customization system that allowed you to look at the entire weapon whilst customizing the different parts of it. You can kind of do that in BF5, but it's just not to the same extent. And World War III is a game made by an indie studio, and it's definitely not on the same level as BF5, but it just shows what you can do if you've got some imagination. Moving on, let's take a look at what many argue is the main game mode in Battlefield 5, Grand Operations. I'm not a fan of Grand Ops in BF5, this is due to poorly balanced maps and lackluster game modes within the Grand Operations. Talking of map balance, things are pretty tragic on maps such as Hamada and Aerodrome in most game modes, never mind just Grand Ops, where one team can completely smash the other and win by a huge margin. Conquest is probably one of the biggest culprits for this. Since DICE removed the Conquest comeback system, or at least turned it down, where the losing team could cap flags more quickly, I've noticed huge ticket differences, and this points at two different culprits. Firstly, you have a poorly balanced map, where one team will have an advantage of capping flags over another due to the terrain and where the flags are positioned. At the same time, you have poorly balanced teams, and no balancing. From what it seems, mid-game, you have a very poor balancer mid-round, and then you of course can't switch teams as well, which will cause a lot of players just to simply quit. If they can't join on their friends, you then have to wait for a new player to join, and lots of different things like this. I mean, switching from a losing team to a winning team is definitely not a good thing, but you don't have to remove team switching altogether in order to make that happen. The class imbalance is really quite poor in BF5, with one class being so underpowered compared to the rest. I'm of course talking about arguably the most important class in the game, the Medic. If Battlefield 1 taught us anything, it was equally balanced classes with a very clever gun balance system is awesome. Weapons with certain specialities is good fun, it means every weapon can do something well, and every class has a certain range in which they excel at. In Battlefield 5, it seems to me as if the Medic is supposed to be the CQB class for all of those close quarters engagements, but that really doesn't make much sense to me, as the Assault class and the Support class is arguably better. If you come up against a hip-firing MG42 with the right specializations, you cannot beat it. The shotguns are also in the Support class, and all the assault rifles in the Assault class are insanely good, not only at close range but also medium range. They then have access to the Gewehr 43 and the M1A1, weapons that can do pretty decent damage at longer ranges as well. The Medic class have a few weapons that can wreck in CQB, but overall it's really not that impressive. DICE recently had a chance to sort this out by introducing a new weapon to the Medic class, with the Ruby rolls and the new shotgun appearing in-game last week. They put them in the Assault and the Support class, so maybe DICE either don't realise there's a problem with the Medic class, or just don't really care. Hopefully they introduce a few changes, maybe even switch a weapon like the M1A1 into the Medic class, just to see how it plays. I'm not going to stick on this one for long, but the vehicles in BF5 are not what I was hoping for at all. They are worse than in Battlefield 1 overall. Across the board, I don't enjoy the vehicles very much. A couple of tanks are pretty fun, but the entire process of tank 1v1s and infantry versus tank gameplay and planes versus infantry and planes versus planes, I don't like any of it. I think it's fairly simple. The planes feel like they're on rails and can't really do much. There's not a whole load of speed control. There's not really any sort of dogfighting technique that you can use, and planes versus infantry are still really, really good, even though they have nerfed them. I'd much prefer to see plane versus plane gameplay as opposed to plane versus infantry gameplay, but there we go, maybe that's just me. Moving towards the back end of this video, we have a little section on company coins. In my opinion, company coins suck. Now, I'm not sure if you saw, but recently DICE have introduced a tank skin to Battlefield 5. It looks okay, nothing that special, a screenshot is in the background. This tank skin costs 33,000 company coins. How am I supposed to buy that? Save up 300 coins a day, or in some players' cases, not receive any coins at all when reaching level 50, and just hope that I magically win the Battlefield lottery and get 33,000 coins? I can only assume that they're placing this there for those people that managed to save up their coins over the last month or so, or forgot to spend them. I can only assume as well that they're about to release a chance to buy company coins in order to get this skin. But if that's the case, surely you'd want to make the skin really quite desirable. For me, this skin looks fairly boring. I know we can't buy company coins just yet, but I guarantee this will come soon and they will be very expensive. I'm not too mad about that, we don't have DLC, and if you're buying cosmetics, whatever, that's up to you. But the entire point of paying for cosmetics, in my opinion, is to have something eye-catching and something really quite special that doesn't affect gameplay, doesn't affect anything within the game, just what your soldier, your character, your tank, your vehicle, whatever it is, what it looks like. Now with cosmetics, for those that don't know, what EA are looking for are a couple of whales, and they want to earn thousands off their purchases. A whale, in the gaming industry, is a word that is used for those players that spend crazy amounts of money on a game with microtransactions, either because they are addicted to it and they are being exploited, or they have far too much money to care. The real issue here is not the fact you have to pay to gain access to a cosmetic. It's the fact they have placed it so far out of reach of those players that would prefer to grind the 100 hours required to get the coins to access the cosmetic, and that just seems really shitty. It's not a massive issue, to be honest, because we're not paying for DLC and I knew this was going to come, but the way it's been approached again is just not very savoury, and I'm not a massive fan of it. A couple of things that I haven't had time to go into in this video. Weapon models are sometimes broken, animations are also sometimes broken, hit markers sometimes appear in the wrong place when you take damage, you can't switch teams, you can't rent servers, some assignments are glitched, endless quitting screens are common, and black screens when launching a V1 or JB2 rocket happen all the time. Finally, the last point I'd like to make is just a short one before I finish. This is for the people who paid full price for the game, and then the game went on sale a month later. I get it. The game didn't sell that many copies and EA are really trying to boost the player numbers before Christmas time. However, paying $70 for a game only to see it go on sale for 50% off just a month or so later really does take the biscuit. Added to all the other controversy surrounding this game, it just smacks of disappointment. And although I still do have my fingers crossed that DICE can turn this game around and turn it into something that I will happily play for a few more 100 hours, I don't think I'll reach the 1,000 hours that I said I might do a couple of weeks ago, but maybe I'll reach 500. I just think that they have so much work to do, and this Christmas period is really going to be a make it or break it time for the community. Hopefully the player numbers stay high so DICE keep on pumping the updates out, but if it drops off and the player numbers drop and people lose interest in the game, I can see DICE doing the same with their updates. Leave your comments down below, let me know what you think of the video, and of course what you think of Battlefield 5, and I'll catch you in the next video.